Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Hopefully everybody is at home, dry and safe, enjoying, hopefully, and not being too freaked out by the events that have occurred so far. This is going to be our read aloud for class today. The book that I'll be reading aloud is Visiting Day by Jacqueline Woodson. So to go ahead and show you the cover of it, you'll notice that the title is not visible on it. Take a few seconds to just think about the visual, the cover that you see. If you were going to do like a picture walkthrough with your students before you did a full read aloud, this might be an interesting thing for things like predictions. Since I haven't actually talked to you guys before about strategies to work through read alouds with your younger students. So you could start a class off like this, asking them, what do you notice about this? What do you think this book is going to be about? Who do you think these two people are to one another? What are they doing? And then have them make even personal connections to this. So does this remind you of anyone? Does it remind you of yourself? Things like that. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and also flip over to the back cover. This is a unique construction of a book since there isn't a title on the front. And we do see the back cover if you would like to also kind of add to the predictions and that you're going to make as a class. The only place where the title is on the actual spine when we see the author and illustrator. So I'm going to go ahead and start the read aloud, kind of try and walk through, maybe ask some questions as I go, finish with a few questions, and then we will just do the discussion of the book at the beginning of class next time. So kind of thinking about the ways you can tie this book in with the readings you did today. Feel free if you would like to include it in your discussion posts, but it is by no means required. And then also think about the ways you might connect this book with the same discussion points that we have in Monster coming up for Thursday. Visiting Day. Notice the title page. You might ask questions here like, does this remind you of any place? Have you ever been anywhere that looks like this? Only on visiting day is there chicken frying in the kitchen at 6 a.m. and Grandma humming soft and low, smiling her secret just for Daddy and me smile. And me lying in bed, smiling my just for Grandma and Daddy smile. See the entire room. What kind of toys does she have? What kind of room is this? How do you think she feels? For those of you who took children's literature, you'll notice the full double page spread here and the full bleed happening on the illustrations. And notice the colors. Think about the way the colors might make you feel or where you see repetition in colors. It's like the green in the couch, the green in the walls, the green in the dress, how these things all tie together. Even notice the little details. Younger students love to kind of focus on those smaller details in the pictures, and that's a lot of times when authors and illustrators will put them in for discussion. What do you notice about the pictures that you see sitting on the shelves? And maybe Daddy is already up, brushing his teeth, combing his hair back, saying, yeah, that pretty little girl of mine is coming today, with all those men around him, looking on jealous-like, 'cause they wish they had a little girl of their own coming. A great point to do here, since we have very little information at the beginning of this book, is to ask the question, where do you think Daddy is? What is he getting dressed for? What is he doing? What do you think about the other guy in the picture? And then you can also, again, look at the kind of minutiae, the smaller details of the illustration. What do you notice about on his wall? Maybe the calendar or any of the things that have been sent. What do you see? What does it make you think, make predictions? Where is Daddy, and how does he feel about this visit? Only on visiting day does Mrs. Tate come over when the sky is still pink, heavy with presents for her son, Thomas, saying, "Please, can you take these with you?" And Grandma taking the presents from Mrs. Tate's arms. Again, a great moment. How early are they getting up? How do you know? So asking your students to do that kind of critical reading, they could connect back to the comment that the sky was still pink, so it's probably really early in the morning. Notice the color wash again, all green. What do you see in the details of the photos that you see on the wall? The details of the house behind. Maybe continue to ask questions. Things like, has there ever been a day when you were going somewhere and you got up really early and were excited to go? And shooting me a look that says, you better not make a sound about Mrs. Tate not having money to take the bus up there to see her only son. And I sit quiet, respectful. So now you can start to ask those questions. Why isn't Miss Tate going to see her son? This, of course, is just a basic comprehension question, but it opens up a discussion about class. And you can talk about taking the bus, public bus, who has the money to take the bus and not, or even the discussion of why they have to take the bus. Depending on where you teach and how you'll teach, you can talk about the discrepancies, the differences between those who choose to take the bus, those who have to take the bus, those who have cars. You can also continue to notice that color wash happening, the pink sky she was talking about, and again, all of the details, small pictures. Only on visiting day do I stand patiently at the bus stop, holding tight to Grandma's hand until everybody's inside. Now, this is a great moment for you to then also talk about community. So, where do they live? What kind of neighborhood do they live? Is this like your neighborhood? How is it similar? How is it different? If you had to guess about what kind of neighborhood this was, what would you guess? And this is a good moment for me to ask you guys to think the same thing too. What is your assessment of this neighborhood? You can also at this moment look at the people standing in line. Who do you see standing in line? What do they look like? Where do you think they're going? And view the rest of the town as a whole. Maybe even ask questions like, do you live somewhere like this, or would you want to live somewhere like this? There's not a whole lot of information to go on, but the kids will be able to draw on their knowledge and be able to answer that question. I didn't read that. I stand patiently at the bus stop, holding tight to Grandma's hand until everybody's inside. How does she look? What do you think about her face? What do you think about Grandma's face? You might ask them, does she look excited? Does she look tired? What is she thinking? What would you be thinking? Continue also to notice, just from an aesthetic point of view, the illustrator's continued use of these blues and greens to tie together the pages that we also see continuing. And we're all passing around fried chicken, cornbread, and thick slices of sweet potato pie until maybe we think we're going to pop. So notice the families, notice the faces. Ask questions. Who are these people? Do they know one another? What are they doing? Why are they doing that, since they're sharing their food? How do the people feel about where they're going? Where, again, now you can check in with your predictions. Where do you think they're going? Do you notice similarities and differences about the people on the bus? At this point, again, setting up with our discussion for this class this week and for our entire class, your students might notice, or you might be able to point out, that it appears that all of the people on this bus, at least from this illustration, are people of color. But instead, I go to sleep and don't wake up again until the bus pulls up in front of the big old building where, as Grandma puts it, Daddy is doing a little time. So now, here's the moment where the predictions possibly were true. Maybe some of the students made that prediction. Maybe they didn't. But you can then reevaluate. So where is he? Do you know what doing time is? Do you know that phrase? If they don't know, ask them to draw from their knowledge of this visual. You see the barbed wire, we see the tower, we see this public bus showing up to it. And then you can, of course, if they don't know, ask them if they know about jail or incarceration, which is a great place to tie in with our Sesame Street video that gives an explanation of incarceration and addresses that. And only on visiting day do I get to tell Daddy everything that has happened over the month while I sit in his lap and he pulls on my braids, smiling his big me and Grandma have been gone forever smile, laughing his big laugh, showing me and Grandma off to his friends, pressing peppermints into my hand and kisses against Grandma's cheek. So, a great moment. All right, let's look at this. What do you notice about this? What about this relationship between this father and daughter? How do they feel? How do you think Daddy feels about this visit? They can draw from both the visual illustrations. They can also draw from the text. We had a lot of mentions about the laughing, the smiling. Why is he pressing peppermints into her hand? Why do you think he's doing that? Why is he kissing Grandma against the cheek? You can ask, again, the kind of context questions, things like, how long have they been gone, or how long has it been since they've seen him? The text reminded us a month, but then you might ask, okay, so do they only get to see each other every month? Do you think they see each other regularly each month? Lastly, never mentioned in the text at this point, again, we get the visualization of the people. So, what do you notice about the people in this illustration? If at this point we've had the addressing point that we're focusing on jail or we're focusing on an incarcerated population, what do you notice? Do you notice the majority of the faces in this picture are people of color with only maybe one presumably not? What do you think about that? This is definitely the point where a conversation can get sticky. And in the past, I've had conversations get sticky where students just immediately jump to, well, yeah, of course there are more black people in jail. And the conversation in the class becomes really awkward. So this is where you can start to talk about things that Michelle Alexander brought up. You can talk about that video that I asked you guys to watch, This House We Live In, and the concepts of institutional racism that ends up creating higher populations of poverty and higher incarceration rates in communities of color, and why. Grandma says it's not forever going to be like this. What do you notice? How does she feel? How does he feel? Continue to evaluate the relationship between the daddy and the daughter. Also, a great moment for analysis. What do you notice about the guard? She says one day we'll be able to wake up and have Daddy right there in our house again. And we won't have to take long bus rides once a month and walk home from the bus stop hand in hand, feeling a little sad, already starting to miss Daddy. What do you notice about the colors? Especially if we're thinking about all the colors we saw prevalent prior to the visit, and now the colors we're seeing prevalent post-visit. Lots of greens prior to, greens and blues, but lots of greens. Now we're seeing lots of these blues. We're also getting a bit of a beginning and end. It started with the sky being pink. It's ending with the sky being pink. You can even ask questions, how would you feel if you had to spend an entire day driving on a bus, coming back from a bus, only seeing your daddy once a month? Grandma says that all it takes is time, a little time. And while we're holding out waiting for Daddy to come home, we can count our blessings and love each other up and make biscuits and cake and pretty pictures to send Daddy. So again, looking at all the details, the things that we see. And in the early evening, if it's a little chilly outside, we can sit out back bundled up in blankets and make each other laugh as we make big plans for when Daddy comes home again. Noticing our visuals. How do they feel? Notice the colors and the way the colors affect. See again this wash of blue wrapping them up, but we also get some of this goldenness as well. And then we come to the end, where we get a little bit of an author's note and a little bit of an artist's note. And Jacqueline Woodson does address the fact that she herself has had a family member who was incarcerated. But this is definitely a place where in your classroom you could ask, bring up, does anyone know what incarcerated means? What it means to be in jail? Do you know the different reasons why some people go to jail? And you're going to get students who are going to have questions about it, some who are going to follow solely on stereotypes as far as only thinking about violence and not thinking about the many other ways that people make it into jail. Largely as we see from research and as we see from the kind of video and the commentary that we get from Michelle Alexander and in some of her more detailed works for adults, she talks about the kind of over-policing and heavily criminalization of things like drug infractions, burglary, things like that, that are small accounts of burglary, small accounts of fighting and violence that wasn't actually death, like impending death and mortality. So these are things that you can talk about in your classrooms, especially address the differences or address the stigmatization surrounding incarceration. Some interesting facts about this book. So this book, beautiful artwork. Jacqueline Woodson, of course, is a very notable author as well, both doing the picture books that we have. Somebody brought in The Other Side, I believe it was, or one of her other books for our author study. We also read her Brown Girl Dreaming at the very beginning of the class, and you could even make lots of comparisons to cultural references from both Brown Girl Dreaming and here in this. Some of my students sometimes question the different things and where is the borderline between cultural representation or cultural authenticity, that culturally conscious book that Rudy and Sims Bishop tells us about, and then those moments that become. Some of my students have questioned the food that was brought on the bus. Does the fact that they're bringing food that is fried chicken and cornbread, does this create more stereotypes than, or reinforce a stereotype versus taking it apart, deconstructing it? But this is a great moment in your classes to talk about the things like class, to talk about race, to talk about neighborhoods, the different communities that were there, to notice the differences between who was in jail and who the guards were, to talk about the differences of people and personalities, who is in jail, and humanizing people who have been incarcerated, who are incarcerated, since as we see that concept of humanization is very important for Walter D. Meyer's book, Monster, and that concept about needing to see us and needing to see people as humans in order to respect their life and their value. The last fun fact that I want to say about this book is that it actually had a fair amount of backlash when it was originally published. Especially when it was put up for several children's literature awards for both the art and the book story and what it does. And instead of being embraced, a lot of people highly opposed it. In fact, if you go to Amazon, like Amazon.com, and look at user reviews, you can already see the kind of commentary that some people have against the book. There's a lot of commentary about if we discuss inmates and we discuss incarceration in a way that doesn't immediately shame, which goes right back to our Michelle Alexander article, are we promoting it? And then are we saying it's okay to commit crimes? So many people question and critique the book for saying, no, we must tell them it's wrong. We must make them feel ashamed of their family members. Otherwise, they'll continue to perpetuate this cycle of learning criminal behavior, of not taking the justice system seriously. And you'll notice in a few other examples, one I most recently found, the name is escaping me, that address incarcerated family members. For children, there is this kind of supporting of the shame, that these children are ashamed and maybe should feel ashamed for their family members, but they themselves didn't do anything, so removing the shame on the individual child, but not from the family member. And so this one does it very differently. So ask about that. How does this address shame? Does it at all? Why? Do we need to address shame if we are talking about incarceration? And it's a really good thing to compare this book as well to the Sesame Street video, noticing that the little boy in Sesame Street, or the little puppet in Sesame Street, he does feel shame. And how does the human who addresses him talk about that? And how is shame addressed in Sesame Street? Are they trying to do something similar to what Woodson is doing? Are they doing it similarly but differently? Similar goal but slightly different tactics? So just a few things to think about. And I'm aware I say a lot now in my videos. So I hope you've enjoyed Visiting Day. Feel free to rewatch it, skip through all of my commentary if you'd like. It's an excellent text and really great to go with this particular week's themes and focus. So email me if you have questions, and have a good one. See you Thursday.